Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea. It is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, all stuck at home together as we gather around the virtual water cooler, talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, a little bit of television, some good stuff like that. And joining us today from his fortress of gloritude, it's one Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing, sir?
Well, you know, John, every day, if nothing else in these crazy times, just to hear how you're going to introduce me from day to day keeps me going. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I wonder what John's going to say about me today. And I have to say thank you, sir, in these times. And on this mirth-filled April 1st, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, you know, it's weird. I mean, and it's good, but every year, April 1st, I know as soon as I go to my news feeds, there's going to be a ton of BS stories because everybody's doing the April Fool's thing. I felt like most sites, I haven't seen a single one this year. I think most sites knew, not appropriate this year.
Yeah.
Which makes me think you're going to see them come back with a vengeance next year. I think we're probably going to see a hell of a lot of them next year. So
I feel that way about Hollywood movies, John.
It's true. All right, guys. Hey, listen, I hope you guys are staying safe, taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other, all that kind of stuff. But let's take a little bit of time in the midst of all the madness to just delve into the stuff that we love, movies and movie news. We do got a hell of a lot of stuff to talk about here today, guys. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into it. And we're going to start with a couple things off the top. The first thing off the top that we need to talk about is this. You know, in a world right now where everything seems to either be shut down or delayed, lo and behold, there are new movie trailers coming, and a new one just dropped for one that I had completely forgotten about. Like a movie I had completely forgotten was even coming at all. And it's this little Gerard Butler film, also with Marina Baccarin, from Deadpool and from Serenity, called Greenland. No, it's not about, it's not a documentary about hiking to the Arctic North. It's an apocalyptic movie about a giant meteor broken into pieces, and all the different pieces are striking the Earth, causing an extinction level event. And the trailer for this movie just dropped. And I'm going to tell you what, it is everything you think it might be. A little silly, but wow, it looks like a lot of fun. And the visuals look incredible on it. Rob, this is not the first asteroid apocalyptic movie we've seen, and maybe it's a little weird having an apocalyptic movie today, but be that as it may, I thought the trailer was a lot of fun. What did you think about it?
Dude. Okay, there are subgenres of movies that, for whatever reason, I love. And when I was a little kid, when I was 5 years old, I had two favorite movies. My first was George Powell's War of the Worlds. But my second, and they would play this on TV all the time, was 1951's When Worlds Collide. And it was all about the planet Belus and Zyra and the destruction of the Earth when Zyra collides into the planet. And you got to see wholesale destruction of cities and flooding of New York and volcanic eruptions. And since I was 5 years old, I love anything to do with comets or asteroids hitting the Earth. When I was in sixth grade, my music teacher took Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle's Lucifer's Hammer out of my hands and gave it to the principal, which is a book about a comet hitting the Earth. And I was so incensed. I mean, I'm reading a thick science fiction book, and my music teacher took it away. Of course, I was inappropriately reading it in class. So this is a subgenre that I love. You give me an Armageddon, Deep Impact double bill, and you might as well be telling me I'm seeing a new Star Wars movie. I'm just saying. So when I saw this trailer, I had no idea. I'm like, ooh, movie, Greenland. Gerard Butler. I'm like, Greenland. That's interesting. I wonder what's going to happen. I had no idea what this was about. I clicked on it yesterday, and Ghibli just does not describe my just utter delight. I watched the trailer like 3 times. There's a scene in it when like the military transport plane that people are being loaded onto like blows up and it's just a glorious explosion. It's like that final 4th TIE fighter that explodes in Star Wars, in the Millennium Falcon's escaping from the Death Star. Yep. One of the greatest miniature explosions. I know everything's CGI now, but I'm like, there's nothing in this movie, at least in this trailer, that didn't put a giant smile on my face. And to know that, fragments of a comet are going to be raining destruction. Nothing is better than the opening destruction of Paris from Armageddon. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that,
great.
John. I mean, you know. But when it comes to giant rocks falling from the sky, I'll watch anything you put in front of me. I swear to God. And when I saw this, I'm like, straight to the top of my must-see list. You know how much I love the Olympus movies. Olympus Has Fallen,
Yep.
London Has Fallen, Angel Has Fallen. I'll watch Geostorm 10 times in a row if that's the only thing that's on TV. Bring it on. Once again, Gerard Butler is you can't really rescue anybody from this. Really, you can't stop.
Yeah,
it from happening.
there's no beating the bad guy in this. There's no saving them. But you mentioned Geostorm, the fall. Does anybody remember that Gerard Butler was the Phantom of the Opera? Does anybody remember that?
Does it matter?
Like at this
does
point,
it matter?
It doesn't matter at this point.
It doesn't matter. He starred in 300 looking all chiseled. All that matters to me is Gerard Butler is doing the Lord's work, sir, in movies like this. I mean, he's become my new, you know, it's not like he's Chuck Norris in canon movies. I mean, those are unassailable, you know, cult good guys wear black, Delta Force, Invasion USA. But in terms of modern technology, I think Gerard Butler is an MVP when it comes to these kind of movies. And the fact that they're making these movies are made to see in the theater, John. These movies should be in theaters. They need to be like Hunter Killer, his submarine movie, which, oh my God, bring it on.
You know what?
I'm so.
Despite 300, I mean, I got to say probably 300 is my favorite movie of his. But aside from that, and everybody will roll their eyes as soon as I say this, aside from 300, my favorite Gerard Butler movie is The Ugly Truth. He did with Katherine Heigl. I love that comedy. Everybody hates it. I love that comedy. Listen, guys, the question here is for you. Have you had a chance to see this Greenland trailer? If so, what did you think? Or is you enthusiastic as Rob is about it? Maybe not. Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. One more thing off the top for us to get to, and that is this. You know, one of the more highly anticipated movies this year is obviously Black Widow. People have been very, very excited about it. It's been delayed and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know, we're always saying around here during this whole lockdown stuff, it says, make lemonade out of the lemons you've been given. Well, it looks like maybe the folks over at Disney and Marvel are doing that same thing, as incredibly unexpectedly. They have, at the very last moment, well, it would have been the very last second, but the film's been delayed, but they have, in the 9th hour, dumped their composer. It's being reported that, this is coming through all the various news sites right now, that Black Widow composer shift as Andre Desplat has been replaced. He has been replaced by Lauren Balfe, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. But he has done such projects as 13 Hours, The Soldiers of Benghazi, Mission Impossible Fallout, Gemini Man, recent Bad Boys for Life, and the music for Six Underground, which, by the way, I don't really like Six Underground all that much. I thought the music in Six Underground was actually really, really good.
Yep.
Now, it should be noted here that this is actually the second time that he's been dumped and replaced at the very last second. He was also supposed to be doing the music for Rogue One, and then infamously was dumped at the last second of that for Michael Giacchino, and now he's been removed from this. So I guess Disney was not really happy or super stoked with the music and thought maybe it was too late, but now that the movie's been delayed, they decided to take advantage of it, I guess, and make a move. Rob, it's almost pointless to say this is sort of unprecedented, because we are living in an unprecedented time right now with all the delays and what is happening to the movie industry at the moment. There's no blueprint for this. There's no precedence for this. But even understanding that, and with the delay, what did you think about hearing about this, about, you know, the last second switch of one composer for another this late into the game on a Black Widow? What did you think? Well,
you know, I think that sometimes Andre Desplat is obviously a world-class composer. I mean, he's even done, he did a Harry Potter film. He did things like the Bourne Conspiracy. So the King's Speech, John, he composed the score for. But sometimes composers, just the material and the work they're doing just doesn't work for the film. And I don't think it's necessarily a failure of the composer. Sometimes things just don't gel. Remember, Howard Shore, the composer of Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson worked with, was composing the music for King Kong, wasn't working out, and Peter Jackson replaced Howard Shore with James Newton Howard on King Kong. I think that maybe it just wasn't, it just didn't work out for whatever reason, and they wanted to go a different way. And maybe, when a composer is hired, before a film comes together, throughout the editorial process, the film sort of changes. And when they finally put up the score to the film, they realize, this isn't working as well as it should. And it's never an easy thing to do, but it happens. And I don't necessarily think it's an indicator of something larger in terms of talent or behind the scenes turmoil or something. Sometimes you just go a different way. And in post, you're able to do that. And I think this composer, he's a newer composer. He's been doing exciting work in action cinema. And I think that they probably said, we need, obviously, a Mission Impossible Fallout score. It makes sense that they would want to go that direction for a movie like Black Widow. And now they have the time. And obviously, movies are never finished. They're only abandoned. They only have to come out. They only have release dates they have to meet. And if they have the opportunity, it just shows, I think, if one studio has shown anything, it's that Marvel will work on these movies until they get it as right as they possibly can. And I think it speaks to them as a company, what they're doing. It's never an easy thing to do. And obviously, they went another way, and it probably was tough on them, but they did it, and they've got the time. So
I think you raise a good point here. I think there are going to be some people who are tempted to look at this and say, oh, well, he must not have been doing a good job, or he must not be all that good. And I don't think that's the takeaway here at all. I think you're right about that, Rob. Look, this is a weird comparison, but think of it like this. Back when they were doing, what's the name of that damn bear? Paddington. Back when they were doing Paddington, the actor they got to be the voice of Paddington was Colin Firth. Academy Award-winning, brilliant, awesome actor, Colin Firth. And then at the last minute, Colin Firth and the director put out a statement saying that Colin Firth said, you know what, it's just that we started watching some of the footage with my voice, and Colin Firth said, mine is not the right voice for Paddington. That obviously is not a commentary on the incredible skill of Colin Firth. It's just that, you know what? My voice wasn't the right voice for this. And so at the last minute, he backed out. They got somebody else to go in and do the voice. It was a better match. It worked better. This is just a matter of, look, you're talking about these high-level artistic collaborations, right? The director and the composer. And if for whatever, you can have an uber-talented composer, but if for whatever reason, hey, you know what? The composer's not quite getting on the same wavelength as the director here. Okay, make a switch to somebody who is, like in the sense of Colin Firth, a better voice for it, a better match. So I think you're absolutely right about that, Rob. I don't think this is a negative commentary on anybody's skill as a composer. It still is kind of funny to hear at this point a switch being made, but if you got the extra time and you think you can improve your film and you got the money to do it, go ahead and do it. Question here is, guys, what do you think about this? What do you think about the last thing? Do you think, the movie was done. It should have just been locked. They should have put it on a shelf until it's released. Or do you think, hey, if you've got the money to play around with and you think you can still tinker, go ahead and tinker with Black Widow. How do you guys feel about it? Jump into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With all that down and out of the way, let's now move into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here in the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with the main topics by going anytime, 24/7, over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's absolutely free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured here as a main topic on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get on to main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by the Baza, who writes, with a large amount of the movies being canceled this year for obvious reasons, would there be any point of next Oscars, Golden Globes, etc., from going ahead? I mean, if 2020 only ends up providing a few months' worth of films and TV shows, it may not be seen as much of an achievement due to far less competition. A crazy example, what if a film like Bloodshot got nominated, possibly even winning Best Film, just due to default? Well, Blaza, that is kind of crazy. That is absolutely crazy, but yes. Okay, so this is a question that's come up a couple of times, And there are some new twists that have just kind of been thrown into it just earlier this week. Now, look, in principle, the notion of, do I feel like the Oscars are really going to be affected all that much? The answer, honestly, is no. The main reason I don't think the Oscars are going to be affected all that much by this whole situation at the moment is mostly because most, not all, but most of the bigger contenders for Oscars don't come out until the last part of the year anyway. Studios very strategically try to line up the release of their films that they feel have a lot of Oscar potential to open near the end of the year so they can take advantage of Oscar buzz in their marketing and up their box office a little bit. It's a good strategy. It's a strategy that works. So right now, if a lot of movies that are coming up between now and June and July get bumped, some of which are still going to open in 2020, I honestly don't see it affecting the Oscars too terribly much. But Rob, that doesn't mean that there's no effect. For example, we have a movie like, this is a situation that's going on right now, Trolls World Tour. Now, think what you want about Trolls. The fact of the matter is, the last movie actually nabbed an Academy Award nomination, I believe, for song. I think it got a Best Song nomination. It may not have, it might have just been in high contention, but, you know, for that Justin Timberlake damn song that everybody loved. Dance, dance, dance. I mean, it was a great song. Everybody got into it. And I'm sure it's a possibility this one could too. But it's breaking the Oscar eligibility rules by debuting on digital. So what does that do? Well, it's interesting that the Academy has put out a statement basically saying, we are going to stay nimble and forward-thinking in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. So basically, the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences is saying, listen, we understand right now that this is an unprecedented time, and it may require from us a little bit of flexibility in our eligibility rules. Now, they have not come out and said they figured out exactly what that's going to look like yet. They are simply saying we are going to remain nimble and forward-thinking, and we are going to be flexible. We're going to approach this very differently than other years and take advantage of that. So, listen, ultimately, I still don't think that this pandemic, this lockdown, these delays in movies and how all this is affecting, I ultimately don't think it's going to have that big of an impact on the Oscars because, again, I think most of the real Oscar contending movies aren't coming out until well after the movie theaters are back open again. But there will be some impact, and it sounds like the Academy is trying to position themselves to deal with that as they move forward. Rob, at this point, is now we're in April, and we're getting further into this thing. How big, if any, of an impact do you see all this stuff having on the Academy Awards come February of 2021?
Well, I mean, I think it could have quite a big impact depending on where our movie theaters are at. You know, I read a couple articles in the trades over the last couple days about the prognosis for the movie going public, and people aren't going to be, I think, anywhere. People are not just going to be like, well, we can go outside again. Let's all go into a closed box full of a bunch of people we don't know and risk it. You know, it's going to take a while for people to get back to normal, and we'll see. Obviously, South Korea, if South Korea is an indication, they've done a very good job at suppressing this and social distancing and testing, and they've done we can see how quickly things can go back to maybe not normal, but close to normal. And if the United States, if people here act accordingly and do what the authorities ask and also what they know is common sense, we could see a return to, maybe a normal way of life, depending on the next couple of months are going to be very telling. And I think if we could get back, if people are going to the movies, say, by July, maybe you could make an argument that the Oscars should go on, because a lot of the Oscar contenders are usually, obviously, it's backloaded at the end of the year. So between September and the holidays, we see a majority of those Oscar contenders come out. I think in a way that would kind of be a good thing. But again, it really depends on what happens. I mean, hopefully, God forbid, we'll be able to, with all the effort that's being expended now, we'll be able to beat this thing back. Our healthcare workers, our essential workers, and people on the front lines that are sacrificing so much time and effort of themselves to beat this thing back. If they do, in fact, do it, and we see people going back to the movies, I'd like to see the Oscars go on, because in a way, that shows I like it when we prevail. Whatever. I don't know what the Oscar history is. Have they ever skipped an Oscars? I mean, was there an Oscar skipped in World War II? I don't recall.
I think there was. I can't remember off the top of my head, though. I guess here's the thing that I think about, though, is that even if people are slow to go back to the movies, which, I hear some people being very pessimistic about that. People are just not going to go back to the movies for a while. I hear some people that are extremely optimistic. People are going to flood back into the theaters as soon as back up. I think the truth lies...
Greenland.
Yeah. Greenland, there you go. I think the truth lies somewhere in between. I think there are going to be a good number of people who are going to be more cautious, but I also think there's going to be a hell of a lot of people that are just going to be anxious to get back to life. But the other thing, though, is this: even if people are slow to go back to the theaters will be open by the time the normal cycle of things of the major Oscar films start coming out, which means those films will meet their eligibility. They will be out in theaters. How many people go to see those movies at that time will remain. You're right. The next month or two is going to be very telling. Maybe it'll be great. Maybe it won't be so great. But I think it will be open. And that's why I don't think it's going to affect the overall Oscars themselves too terribly much. But you're right. We're not really going to know for another month or so. I think you're absolutely right about that. I think the next month or so is going to be telling about that. The question here is, guys, what do you think about that? How big of an impact do you think this is going to have? And it seems like the Academy now is kind of acknowledging, we're going to have to be flexible here to understand. We're going to have to maybe change some rules for this year because this is very different. But how big of an overall impact do you think this is going to have come February of 2021 when we get the next Oscars? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Imran, who writes, Dwayne Johnson recently did a fan Q&A on his Instagram. Yes, he did. In that Q&A, he said Black Adam is scheduled to start production in July. However, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, he is not sure it will still go ahead. Will this movie ever see the light of day? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Imran. And yes, of course, it's not just movies that are supposed to be opening up in theaters right now that are getting impacted. Movies that were in the middle of production, but also movies that are supposed to be starting production are also getting impacted as well. Of course, Erin Cummings, one of the co-hosts of this show, she has a major motion picture that she's supposed to be shooting right now that is not shooting at the moment because of that. So yes, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did get on his social media during a Q&A, and somebody asked him about Black Adam, and he did say the following. I am very excited about Black Adam, by the way. I've been training very, very hard, unlike when he's slouching it and just sitting on the couch. I've been training very, very hard. We were supposed to start shooting in the summer, in July, and we'll see. I'm not quite too sure if it's still going to happen, or at least if we're still going to start shooting in July, but it will all work out the way it's meant to work out. So that comes to us from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. There are two different things to look at here. Number one, the simple temporary question about the delay. What is the likelihood of a delay? I would say at this point it's probably a 50-50 chance that the film gets delayed. I still think there's a very good chance that they delayed the start of production. Again, this isn't a question. I think it's a little bit better than theaters being open because you're talking about some people just kind of maybe getting back to work. And in July, we're in the beginning of April, May, June, July. That's still 3.5 months away. So I'm not willing to say right now that they will be able to start shooting or that they won't. I think that's up in the air. And I think Dwayne Johnson's right about that we'll see. The second question becomes, is this movie just as cursed as, say, New Mutants? Is this movie, because they've been trying, look, Dwayne Johnson recently talked about, Rob, how he's been working on this movie for 10 years. Like, we joke about how it's been over 5 years since they even announced him as being Black Adam, but he himself has actually been personally working on this and trying to get this to come together for 10 years. And there were multiple times they were going to do it, and then it fell by the wayside over. And now they finally say they're going to do it, and now maybe another delay. I think if he's been working on this for 10 movies, this movie's happening one way or the other. The only question mark is whether it's July. And right now, I'm saying it's a push. I'm giving it a 50-50 shot to start shooting in July, but we'll have to wait and see. Rob, two questions here. Temporary, the starting of shooting. Bigger picture, is this movie cursed? I don't know. What are you thinking about Dwayne Johnson's comments?
Well, look, again, everything is in flux. And when a movie is put into pre-production, when there's work going on, and with movies like this, there's storyboards, animatics, visual effects shots being planned, the money spigot has been turned on, and when that's the case, it's like a train rushing down a hill or something. I don't know if trains do go down hills, but if they did, it's like that, and the movie will get made. It's like you can't call this force majeure act of God, whatever you want to call it, this pandemic. It's not about being cursed. It's about the fact that things happen and you got to roll with those punches. And I think this movie is going to get made. I think Dwayne Johnson is one of the biggest stars in the world right now. I think this is a movie that people want to see, and if nothing else, I think he's willing this movie into existence by sheer force of his own magnetism and social media presence. If nothing else, Dwayne Johnson's Instagram feed is going to make sure that Black Adam happens. And I think we're going to get it, just like we're going to eventually get New Mutants, and these things prevail. And in a way, both New Mutants and the Black Adam movie are indicators that by sheer force of will, you can make things happen. You don't have to give up your dreams. Deadpool is another one of those movies where who knew if it was ever going to get made, but Ryan Reynolds willed it into it. He made it happen. Maybe that, and he leaked that test footage. And, I think when these people get behind these projects, I find it uplifting and actually fairly inspirational to see these things get made. So, yeah.
All right. Question here is, guys, for you. What do you think the chances are that they're able to make the start date of this? I think it's 50-50 at this chance. I'm not willing to put any money on either way. Do you feel like this movie's cursed at this point? I feel, and Rob clearly feels, we are going to get this movie. It's just a matter of when. Jump down in the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Henry S., who writes, "Hey, John, love the show. Thank you so much, Henry. With most of the big movies that were coming out in July due to coronavirus, most of them being pushed, I noticed another big movie that was coming in July that has not been delayed, Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Why haven't they moved?" He said movies, he probably meant moved. "Why haven't they moved their release date when all the other July films have? Do you think they're just waiting to see if the theaters will be open by July? What are your thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, in the midst of all this stuff going on, and a lot of the movies moving out of July, we just talked about how Sony just moved a bunch of their films as well. Warner Brothers had moved some other films of theirs recently. But the one film that is still hanging in there is Tenet. Now, this, for a lot of people, is one of many, many people's, Rob's, most anticipated movie of the year. A lot
Absolutely.
of people consider this one of their most absolutely anticipated movies of the year. And they have not yet moved this film. And if you listen to Christopher Nolan, maybe they won't. Because Christopher Nolan is saying they're going to keep their release date. They're going to keep their release date. That's what he's saying. Now, that's great that he's saying that. That's wonderful. Good for him. Of course, ultimately, even though Christopher Nolan is one of those directors today that has a lot more sway and power than, say, most directors do, he, of course, will not be the one to call the shots about when and where they release this film. That will be WB. But as of right now, they are choosing to hold on to this release date. And I think there's a couple things here that play into that. Number one, they are getting some signs, and we'll talk about this more in our next story, but they are getting some signs from the industry that they may be open by then. I think the other thing is a monetary issue. They had started their marketing cycle. So they want to see, I think the only reason they haven't pulled the release date at this point is because they want to see if they can not make those advertising dollars they had already started spending go to waste. So I think you're looking at a project here that is going to, up until the very last moment that they can, they're going to hold on to that release date. They're going to hold on to it. That said, I don't think there's much chance that this movie comes out in July. I really don't. Even if the theaters are open by then, there is just no way that over the next month and a half, 2 months, that we're going to know for sure that the theaters are going to be open. And if we don't know for sure that those theaters are going to be open, Rob, you and I have talked about this a couple of times already. If they don't know for sure that the theaters are going to be open in July, they're not going to run out and spend another $70 million in marketing a July release date if it ends up they have to end up pushing it to December or February of next year or something like that. It's just too expensive. And when they realize that they can't start ramping up their real advertising and their marketing push for this thing, within the next 6 weeks, we're going to hear that they do push that date. So I listen, nothing's impossible. It is possible. Maybe they could hit that date. I just don't see a path to victory there for them, though, on this, because there's just no way within the next few weeks that they will know for sure that they'll be open, thus they can start spending the marketing dollars. So yeah, hey, bravo for the courage, holding on to that release date, believing you can do it and believing you can get it out. That's great. But I think when push comes to shove, they do move the date. So I don't know, Rob, how do you see this?
Well, it's to me, it's the two movies. It's Tenet and Top Gun 2 Maverick. They're both hanging in there. And I'm just like, I'm curious to see what happens. And I think, look, Paramount, in the case of Top Gun, Paramount needs a win, man.
Yeah,
Paramount they need a win, and I think they're going to hang on. And what movie? If there's any movie that can help America come out of this, it's Top Gun 2. If anybody can get people back into theaters, I can see a marketing campaign. But Tenet as well. I mean, this is a marquee title. This is one of the greatest, most exciting filmmakers currently working today. And I don't think everything Christopher Nolan does is perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I think Dark Knight Rises, as much as I like it, is kind of a mess. And I Interstellar, but even when he makes to what my mind is a mess, it's glorious. I saw Inception in the theater 8 times. I couldn't get enough of it. Tenet looks to be that kind of movie. If nothing else, everything that Christopher Nolan makes is so handsome. It's so classical. It's so. I mean, I just like sitting in the theater watching the images that he chooses to present to me, and I hope, I mean, I don't want to wait until 2021 to see it, and I just think we just have to wait and see. We've got to take this on a day by day, week by week, month by month basis, and these movies are sort of teetering on the edge. They're both July releases, aren't they? And we'll see what happens, but. I think we can't say for sure yet.
Yeah, I am pessimistic. I am pessimistic that this thing comes out in July. I mean, listen, hey, hope springs eternal. Wouldn't it be great if it does? And listen, you hit July, and let's say things break good for us. Let's say things break good. Wouldn't it be great to have the theaters open back up? And ladies and gentlemen, the newest Christopher Nolan film, Tenet. Like, that would be great. And so, yeah, hope springs eternal. You have to forgive me if I'm a little bit pessimistic that it's actually going to happen. Question here is, guys, what do you think about this? Do you think maybe they will be able to hold on to that date? Do you think, at some point they're going to have to just let that go? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down and out of the way, let's move on to main topic number 4. And our fourth main topic today gets submitted to us by Gregory Vaught, who writes, "Hi, everyone. I read an article in The Hollywood Reporter in which AMC CEO Adam Aron forecasts that AMC theaters reopening in mid-June. Do you think this forecast is realistic? If it fits in with the 6 to 12 week time frame in which AMC said that they would stay closed, I personally cannot wait to return to the movies, but I also want us to be safe when the theaters reopen. What are your thoughts? Thanks, and I hope you temper the filthy and stay clean." All right, well, listen, the filthy is always done. The filthy is always done with the utmost of hygiene, my friend. Always with the utmost of hygiene. So, yes. Yes, AMC, of course, they are getting forgive the language, they are getting the shit kicked out of them with this whole thing, as are many, many people out there, but we're talking about the movie world, so we'll talk about things within the movie world. They are getting the crap kicked out of them, as well as Regal, Alamo Drafthouse, Cinemark, they're all getting the crap kicked out of them right now. But, AMC came out and they said they were shutting down for 6 to 12 weeks. Mid-June would be that. And listen, yeah, AMC CEO sounded pretty optimistic. He said, we expected to be shut for 6 to 12 weeks. That would be May 1st to mid-June, and that might be more the right timing. I think if we learned anything in the last 2 weeks is that people just so want to get out of their houses. I think we're all feeling cooped up and want to get out and have a life and return to normal. And he's not wrong. I mean, he's not wrong about that. I mean, people are I'll tell you a story. I told Rob this yesterday. I'm used to working from home. I'm used to it. So that's fine. But even I am starting to feel cooped up a bit. And it's gotten to the point that this is what I'm doing now, Rob. I was telling Rob this a little bit just before we started the show. But this is what I'm doing now. So when I'm not working on the show and I've got time and I'm like, I can't go out. You know what I've started doing? I haven't bought an extra dock for my treadmill desk for the Nintendo Switch because my wife Ann plays Animal Crossing. So now I've resorted to getting on my treadmill and walking on my treadmill while playing Animal Crossing for my wife because she does all the real stuff and I go out and I get wood and resources and money for her in the game so that when she's ready to play the game again, she's got all the resources there to do it. That's what I'm doing. I'm starting to do stuff just to kill time now when I'm not working. So anyway, and I got to get my walk in anyway, so I got to get on the treadmill and do that. So that's what I'm doing. He's not wrong. People are itching to get out. It's true, but we also got to be smart about it. He is saying he thinks mid-June is when they can open up again. Now, clearly, AMC is a company, Rob, that will do a lot of research. They put a lot of money into all this stuff. They want to know when they can open. They want to be careful about not saying things that don't end up being true because that can bite them in the ass later. And I respect that. I do. And I would love for the movie theaters to be open again in mid-June. And I should say it's not an impossible dream at this point. We are just at April 1st. We're talking about 2.5 months from now. But boy, if the term optimistic applies, I think that applies here. Now, I don't know if maybe Christopher Nolan, we were just talking about Christopher Nolan saying he wants to hold that July release date for Tenet. Maybe Christopher Nolan and the CEO of AMC have been talking to each other. And maybe that's why he's thinking we can hold on to this date. I don't know. I have two feelings on it, though. Number one is this would be great if this is true. But number two, I again, like the last story, just like Christopher Nolan thinking they're going to open this movie in July, I think it may be optimistic. So I don't know, Rob, you hear this. What are your thoughts on the CEO of AMC Theaters still thinking we think we're going to be able to open mid-June?
Well, again, these statements are based on the sliding sands of the situation. And nobody can say for sure exactly what's going to be happening. It really is going to be telling what happens. Obviously, even the government and the briefings that we've been getting from the federal government over the last couple of days have talked about how we're going to see the most cases mid-April. And if all of this social distancing, I mean, we don't even have all the states social distancing with people yet. And there's a lot still in flux. So I would say, look, would I like theaters to be open in June, as I'm sure the CEO of AMC does? Yes, I would. But I just don't know if that's feasible at this time, and we'll know. I mean, we'll know as time goes on. I don't think now we can say, and I think that in a way maybe it's prudent. I would think that movie theaters, which is a place where people congregate, that if there's one place that you need to err on the side of caution, it's with movie theaters. And optimistic opening dates are probably not the greatest thing in the world for places like that where people are going to congregate. And I think that you have to be a little bit more conservative with your estimation of when your business is going to come back, especially when you're dealing with specifically crowds. So I think it might be a little optimistic now. I don't think that there's anything wrong with optimism, John. But I don't think right now you can make an accurate assessment of what's going on. I mean, remember, a month ago, this was a Democratic hoax, and now look where we are. Yeah. I mean, it's just you just don't know. You've got to really wait and see how the situation is developing.
There's another big elephant in the room that this is all ignoring. That's all well and good if you're Aaron, CEO of AMC Theaters, that you say, we want to open mid-June. That's great. But it may not be your call. Like, for instance, right now in
Right.
California, it's illegal for you to be open right now, right? So that's great. You can say you think you'll be open, but that it's really going to, first of all, the individual states have to say, okay, now these sorts of businesses are allowed to be open, and then the choice is yours. Right now, the choice isn't theirs. AMC doesn't really have a big say in this at the moment. So there are a couple of hurdles that have to be cleared first before that gets there, which I think, as you do, Rob, that makes his statements a little bit optimistic. But what do you think, guys? I think we all agree, wouldn't it be great if that actually works out? It would. We all agree about that. Of course we do. But there's a lot of hurdles to clear between now and then. I just don't know if fully opening in June, I mean, again, not impossible, but seems a little bit optimistic. Right. What do you guys think about that? Jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down and out of the way, well, actually, you know what? Before we get to the next topic, I should say this. I wanted to know, because this is a really interesting issue and seems it kind of is an issue that tugs on our optimism versus our reality at the same time, I decided to make that the topic of today's question of the day. So I put the question to you guys just before we started the show. I put up a poll on Twitter. Right now, about 1,200 of you guys have responded. The question of the day was simply this. AMC Theaters is saying that they think they'll be open by mid-June. Do you think they will be? Simple. Yes, they will be, or no, it's too optimistic. Right now, 37, which is more than I thought there would be, but 37.4% of you are saying yes, you think they'll actually be open by mid-June. 62.6% of you guys are saying right now, no, it's a little bit too optimistic. Guys, I'm going to leave that poll there for the rest of the day. If you want to jump over to my Twitter, that's simply at John Campea, and cast your vote there. And in the meantime, of course, jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, now, with that down and out of the way, let's move on to our fifth and final main topic today. And our fifth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by our friend Austin, who writes in, "Hey, John. I'm a huge fan of Ron Howard's Solo movie. I am too, as a matter of fact. I know it didn't do well, but I thought it was great. A lot of us have been asking and hoping for a sequel to the film and even got the hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen trending. With everything going on, how good are the chances that Lucasfilm gives the fans what we want and deliver a Solo 2? All right, thanks a lot for sending in that question, Austin. First thing I want to mention, always be careful about claiming what the fans want, because no matter who you are, you do not represent all the fans. And not all the fans want a Solo 2. A lot of them do. I would love a Solo 2. But not all the fans do, so let's be careful about ever claiming the fans want this. You don't speak for the fans. You only speak for a certain segment of fans. But let's get that out of the way. It is interesting that you wrote that in, because some new stuff has just kind of come out about Solo 2 that makes it look unlikely. Now look, the reality of it is this, is that Solo 2 was always highly unlikely once Solo came out and hit theaters. Before Solo came out and hit theaters, oh yeah, look, Disney isn't putting out a movie without the dreams of turning said movie into a franchise, right? You do a Solo because maybe you hope you might be able to do a Solo 2 and get a string of films out of this, right? Makes sense. The movie went through a lot of production hell. Obviously, they had to get rid of the directors when they were just about done the movie. They bring in Ron Howard. Ron Howard had to redo a whole ton of it. And listen, I think Ron Howard did a tremendous job, given the circumstances. He even still met the release date. It's crazy. What Ron Howard did was nothing short of Herculean in that regard. So there was all that. However, the film did not perform well, to say the least. It did not perform well. It lost money. The film lost money. Not truckloads of money, but still, it is a Star Wars related film that lost money. And that does not stand over at Disney. So it made it look very unlikely that it could happen. Anyway, the screenwriter of the film, one of the screenwriters of Solo, John Kasdan, of course, Lawrence Kasdan, the guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Lawrence Kasdan's son, he was asked directly, hey, what's the progress on a Solo 2? And John Kasdan just said the following. I don't think anyone is pursuing a Solo sequel at the moment. This is the person on Twitter who sent him the question. I think a feature at this point would be a tough sell. And the Disney Plus Star Wars slate is really pretty packed. All shows I'm looking forward to. My work on Indiana Jones is long over because his script is done, but I'm excited there's forward movement. Again, to the most relevant part to this story, back at the front, I don't think anybody is pursuing a Solo sequel at this moment. I think a feature at this point would be a tough sell, and the Disney Plus Star Wars slate is already pretty full. That's, of course, coming from the screenwriter John Kasdan of Solo. Rob, sometimes in life, we get news that we were expecting, but it's still hard to get it. I don't think there was ever, as much as I enjoyed Solo, I think Solo was a really good, fun space adventure film. I enjoyed it a great deal. But as much as I enjoyed it, and as much as I would be very interested in a sequel, I think we all knew this wasn't going to get it. In a world where Disney and Lucasfilm can pursue anything they want, there really doesn't seem to be much motivation to go back to a franchise you did try and delivered your first money-losing proposition in your history. So I fully expected to hear at some point, no Solo 2 is happening. It still kind of sucks to hear, I acknowledge that. But Rob, despite all this, what do you think about this kind of declaration from John Kasdan that doesn't look we're going to get one? Are you surprised at all by that? And what do you think the future chances are for a Solo 2 ever happening?
Well, I think it's unfortunate in a way because I thought this movie was definitely respectable, a respectable entry. I enjoyed it. I liked the characters. I thought it was a fun movie. And while it's, maybe it wasn't a 4-star film, I definitely give it a solid 3 stars, maybe a B+. And I liked it. And whenever I revisit it, I enjoy it. And it's unfortunate. But the fact is, John, as we always say, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And it really comes down to money. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to look at the box office, and whether they had to retool the movie and reshoot a majority of the film doesn't matter. All that matters is what did this movie do at the box office? And this movie just didn't justify making a sequel, which is too bad. And as much as I would have liked to have seen another adventure, maybe they could have made Han Solo at Star's End, or Orlando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu. Who knows? They've got those books. I don't understand why they don't go back and adapt some books, but what can you say? It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen because of the money. That's just the way the business works.
If you were in charge of Disney right now, do you pull the trigger on it yourself, or does your enjoyment of the franchise outweigh? Here's a better question: with the response to Solo, do you think there is a chance that a second film could do better financially than the first one? Or do you see that even if it is better, the margin of difference would be so nominal it doesn't make any sense anyway? Like, what's your approach to that?
Well, here's the thing. Looking at what Disney's able to do with their stagecraft technology, think about it. An episode of The Mandalorian, I think that I read in an article, it's like $15 million an episode. All right, for a half-an-hour episode. So that's $60 million for 2 hours. Now, why does a Star Wars movie now have to cost $150 to $200 million? Every time they make another Star Wars movie, there's more assets. They're creating more props. They've got the Millennium Falcon cockpit, obviously. They've got so many costumes. They've got so much. And I think this idea that a Star Wars movie needs to cost $150 to $200 million or $200 million plus is kind of wrong-headed. Why not try and make a Star Wars movie for $80 million, $80 million or $100 million? Use your stagecraft technology, use that tech for The Mandalorian, and make a Star Wars movie, a theatrical Star Wars movie that you make for half the price, and see if you could do another Solo movie. Because if you could do that, and with all of these franchises, it's so crazy to me that Star Wars, when you think about it, the original was an independent movie, basically. I mean, I know Fox helped finance it, true, but it was not made for a ton of money. And it's almost like Hollywood has forgotten that you can go make these effects-heavy movies, but bring more of an indie filmmaking sensibility to them. And if you could pull off a Star Wars movie for $80 million and release it theatrically and make $500 million, Or let's go look at Solo's box office. How could you, if you could make $400 million, let's say Solo made, I know it made just shy of that, but if you could make a Solo movie that could make $400 million, how would you have to make it viable as a theatrical feature? Well, you'd have to make it for like, say, 70 or 80 million bucks. And if you did that and you spend another, say, 80 million on marketing, you might be able to pull that off and actually not just break even, but make a tidy profit. It goes on to Disney Plus. You release it theatrically worldwide. And I think if you had a great indie filmmaker or something utilizing the technology that they're pioneering on The Mandalorian, why should a Star Wars movie have to cost as much as they've been costing? And I think that there's nobody thinking in those kind of terms. A Star Trek movie should not cost $200 million. Just like a Star Wars movie doesn't have to cost $200 million either.
Yeah, listen, I've been saying for years that Hollywood needs to get a grip on its spending. Like when you get a movie like District 9, which was incredibly advanced for its time, advanced, heavy visual effects. They spent, what, $30 or $40 million to make that movie. When you've got Invisible Man costing $7 million to make, they just need to get a grip on things. I will say, though, however, this, Rob, about, Mandalorian costing, because of the stagecraft technology, which is insanely good, being like 15 million episode. You do also have to keep this in mind. I haven't done the math. I'm going to take a guess. Like 70% of Mandalorian is Mandalorian walking by himself on a flat desert. I mean,
it's true.
It's very, or alone in a city street or in a forest. Like they made it in such a way that it was very, from an environment point of view, it was a very simple story to tell. But I don't think that undermines your point about how, look, if they made Solo for $100 million, it would have been profitable. It would have been profitable if they made it for $100 million. Now granted, they basically had to make the movie twice. So, I mean, they were screwed from the beginning. But I don't know. It raises a lot of questions. Guys, the question here is... Well, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I really do think that the people that are making these movies, that there's now this process that the studios have put in place that they can't... With Neil Blomkamp, he was an effects guy. So he understood how to make District 9. The problem is the people that are making these movies, even the directors, as talented as they are, they're used to now working in a certain methodology, a certain way, and the studios are set up to making movies a certain way. And I think that there's a way to do it differently where you can keep these costs far lower. It's just you have to have a team of people that understand how to do it. And I don't know if the studios are looking into that. And I think that they should, because remember, character and story, John, goes a long way. If you're going to, like that chase in the beginning of Solo, when they're going through the streets of Corellia, and when Solo steals that speeder, think about how that chase, every shot's this gigantic effect shot. Well, if you shoot things differently, and I think one of the things about the stagecraft technology is it forces people to look at a production methodology that's a little different, where everything is not as big and as expansive as they are making it. $100 million is a lot of money. They should try making a more of an indie-minded Star Wars or Star Trek movie, release it theatrically, and see what they could do. Because if you have talented people that understand how to shoot movies and combine effects and do it cheaply, like Neil Blomkamp did, or Gareth Evans, that didn't work, or Edwards, that didn't work out as well on Rogue One. But if you go back and you look at his movie Monsters, which is how he got all of his jobs to begin with, he got Godzilla and Rogue One because of that. You could make movies that don't have to cost as much as they do. They could be half of what they are. And if you concentrate on characters and story, people will go.
All right, guys, the question here for you is this. What do you make of John Campea come out and saying, don't hold your breath for Solo 2? I mean, for a lot of us, it was, that was obvious. But there are a lot of people out there that were really holding out hope they would. What do you think? Do you think maybe at some point we might get one anyway? Or is there just too much stuff to do and they're just going to move on from it? Does this give them an object lesson about their spending and all that kind of stuff? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. Now, normally, what we've been doing the last few weeks is that Rob and I have been giving different movie recommendations. We're going to forego that today because we've had a ton of topics to talk about here, and we do want to get to the live questions. So right now, Rob and I are going to take a short 4-minute break, give ourselves a chance to rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs, refill our drinks, give you a chance to run, use the bathroom, talk amongst yourselves for a little bit. So hang tight, guys. Don't go anywhere. Robert and I will be right back with your live questions. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Guys, and we are back a little bit early, so let's just jump right into it and get to your live questions. And we're going to start things off here, getting up with Diorama Demon writes, living in the UK, we don't pay for healthcare. Wondering, does having to pay for healthcare change your perspective of a film? If someone is having surgery or a baby in a film, does your knowledge of costs change your view? You know, as a Canadian, listen, I don't want to get into politics. I'm just going to tell you something about my experience. But no politics in this thing. We're all movie fans here together. But that was one of the strangest things for me coming from Canada here. Because here, if you stub your toe, you better hope you have some money. But I find that normally a lot in movies, they just kind of ignore that. They really don't ignore that much unless that's part of the plot. Like Breaking Bad, can he afford his treatment and stuff like that? If it becomes a part of the plot, then that's fine. Other than that, I find they kind of just gloss over that. But I got to imagine, though, that when it is brought up as a plot point, it's got to be kind of odd for a lot of other people in different parts of the world. Good or bad, I'm not getting into the politics of it. I'm just saying it must be odd for people in different parts of the world to see that. So it must be a little bit strange. Gio writes, you think Jack Sparrow was gay or just feminine? Oh, no. I think there were scenes in that in that franchise that he had with Keira Knightley, particularly in the first one, that make it pretty clear, at least to me, Rob, it looked pretty clear that he was very, very heterosexual. But that's I've never interpreted it any other way. Not that it matters, but I thought it was pretty clear. They made it clear he was heterosexual. What do you think?
I think so. I think so too. I mean, he's obviously. I think the whole Jack Sparrow thing that he does is an act, so people can't see him coming when it really matters.
Yeah. Oh, and anything else? It's an act of what's the Rolling Stone guitarist again? Keith Richards. Yeah, and Keith Richards. He's basically doing a Keith Richards. And, Keith Richards is pretty clear. All right, so we move on here. Gane1 writes, will drive-ins make a comeback in this new normal? God, listen, if anything, it's made me really miss drive-ins, but I don't think it'll have drive-ins make a big comeback because a lot of the financial realities of drive-ins still exist. A lot of people still don't go to drive-ins. On top of that, you need big plots of land that can't be used when the weather is bad and all that kind of stuff. So I would love to see drive-ins make a big comeback. I am pessimistic as to their ability to do that, though. So we'll have to wait and see. Nosferatu writes, Jurassic Park and Seinfeld are in a shared universe. And Dennis Nedry, he's the guy who plays, what's his name again? Newman. Nerdy is Newman's twin brother. I just figured out Newman's last name. So that's right. You got the shared cinematic universe. It's twin brothers. It's the same guy. I keep forgetting that he's even in that movie, to be honest with you. All right, Luis Dotson writes, recommendation, Four Brothers. Oh, that's an interesting one. In my top 10, out-of-town shooters, it's a movie about how family is more than blood. That's a movie, Rob, that actually didn't get a lot of love when it came out, like either critically or financially. It did all right, but critically or financially, I thought it was an okay movie. Did you end up seeing it when it was out, or what did you think?
I did too. I mean, yes, I did. And I thought it was okay. I enjoyed it. It's funny. Not every movie has to be A+. I mean, John, I have a lot of movies in my quiver of things that I love that aren't necessarily the greatest movies in the world, but I find entertainment value in them. And that's okay.
Yeah, and seriously, when you go back to it, look at the cast. Mark Wahlberg, Sofia Vergara, before a lot of people knew who she was. Yep. Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah.
The original, who was the original War Machine again? Why am I forgetting his name? Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard, yeah.
I mean, the cast is stacked in that movie. So anyway, that's a good recommendation, Luis. I think one that a lot of people have forgotten about. That's a good recommendation. All right.
I agree.
Next one up, Captain Chicken Pants writes, like Cinderella Man, another underrated gem is Road to Perdition. That's a really good one. Remember seeing it at the cinema. To put into perspective, just how old are we? The child in that movie is CW's Superman. Really?
I didn't know that.
Hold on a second. Hold on 1 second. Hold second. Wait a minute. Really? Tyler Holken was the kid in Road to Perdition. Fuck that. That is the thing that will make me feel old today. Also, besides Tom Hanks.
A Google search, they have pictures of them there's a picture of them together when he was young and when he was old. It's unbelievable.
But remember the cast in this. I think Jennifer Jason Leigh was in it. Stanley Tucci, Jude Law, James Bond, Daniel Craig. And based on a graphic novel, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. Yep.
Yeah. So that's another good recommendation there, kid. Holy crap, I had no idea that kid was Tyler Hoechlin. Anyway, Walks with Joe writes, ever play Alan Wake? Great mystery story. I'm not familiar with it. Rob, you familiar with it at all? I've never heard of it.
No.
Something I'll keep my eyes open for, Walks with Joe. Adam Tuchetto writes, made a mistake. Jan was in the club in Rocketeer, not Rocket Man. Oh, okay, so I was like, really? I don't remember saying, okay, Rocketeer, not Rocket Man. I'm just slowly losing it and reverted to what I called the movie as a kid. Got it. So I remember this. Adam Tuchetto wrote in yesterday and said, Jan from The Office was singing in a club in Rocket Man. I'm like, really? I don't remember that. And anyway, but thank you for the correction on that, Adam. It was not Rocket Man. It was Rocketeer. Okay. Thank you. That makes more sense now. Thank you for the follow-up on that. Russell Amador writes, just wait now. What if John Wick is the villain and it's a shared cinematic universe with Fast and the Furious? Mind blown. Of course, we were talking yesterday about the fact that the director of Hobbs and Shaw, who is also one of the directors of John Wick, wanted and was talking with Keanu Reeves and were planning on getting Keanu Reeves in Hobbs and Shaw. They couldn't figure out a way to do it properly at the right timing, but they said, we're going to circle back to this, suggesting that they will use him again in the future. They have been talking about trying to get him into Hobbs and Shaw, the second one, maybe as the villain. That being said, what if he's not just the guy from John Wick? What if the Baba Yaga, Rob, is the guy that Hobbs and Shaw have to go up against next? What if they're put on the Baba Yaga's radar? There's an action film for you. I mean, come on, that movie makes all the money, right? Doesn't that movie make all the money?
All the money.
Of course, it's not going to happen. I honestly think there's a 50-50 chance that Reeves shows up in this movie as the villain. I think there's a solid 50-50 chance. I know there's enough people talking about it.
We were talking about that yesterday. Bring it on.
Oh, it'd be so much fun. All right, Orange Hand writes, I think the main reason bad guys explain their plans and not kill the hero is their ego. It's not enough to win. Everyone must know they won. As Guldakat said, a true victory is making your enemy see they were wrong to oppose you in the first place. A little Star Trek reference in there for you. Yeah, but let's face it, Rob, this whole trope of the villain explaining their plan, that's more of a plot device than it is a reflection of reality, because it happens every single time, but it is really more for the audience, the audience's edification, right, than anything else, and give them excuse about how do they. But you know what? This points out a big pet peeve of mine, okay? When the good guys get a drop on a villain, they shoot him, right? Whether you're sneaking up behind the stormtroopers, bang, bang. Whether you're sneaking up behind the henchmen, bang, bang. When the bad guys get the drop on the good guys, they're far more civil. They're like, freeze. Put your hands up. Of course, they're sparing the heroes, giving the heroes the chance to go, turn around. Like, even in Return of the Jedi, my favorite Star Wars movie, right? There's this huge battle going on where, on Endor, where rebel troops and Ewoks are just slaying stormtroopers, and stormtroopers are shooting Ewoks and doing all this kind of stuff. But when Han and Leia are at the blast door trying to get open, and stormtroopers get the drop on them, the stormtroopers don't just walk out and shoot them dead. They start out, freeze, giving Leia the chance to hold out the gun. I love you. I know. Bang. But I mean, that to me is a bigger pet peeve, that the bad guys act like good guys and the good guys act like bad guys. I don't know, Rob, what do you think about that? Can you think of another example like that?
Well, I keep thinking when it comes to this trope, the greatest use of it ever was in the Watchmen comic book, and they replayed it in the movie too. And it's at the end when they're at Karnak, Adrian Veidt's headquarters, and he explains his master plan. And Night Owl and Rorschach are like, "Oh, come on, Adrian. When did you? As you're monologuing, how do you think this insane fantasy of yours could ever come to pass?" I'm paraphrasing, but Adrian Veidt says, Ozymandias says, "I'm not some Republic serial villain, Dan. Do you think I would explain my master plan if there was any possibility that you could possibly affect its outcome? I did it like 38 minutes ago." So he explains his master plan, and then it cuts to, it's the greatest ending of a comic book in history, when Rorschach and Night Owl look at each other and they realize that Adrian Veidt pretty much destroyed New York. And you turn the page, and it's the last page of the comic, and you see them looking at each other, and each panel just fades out to white. And that's the end, knowing that Ozymandias, he did it. He even though he monologued his plan, the villains couldn't stop him. And he only monologued it because he'd already done his evil deed. And in my mind, even as I say it, it's the greatest use of a villain monologuing in history and then getting away with it. And because he already did his deed. And I thought that was the greatest turning of that trope like ever done. But in terms of, people getting the villains being the good guys and the good guys being the villains, I can't really I can't really think of it. It's just what came to mind was Watchmen. That was my.
That's a good one.
It's my favorite thing ever.
That's a great one.
38 minutes ago. It's so good.
All right. Frankie Gouge writes, movie delivery ID. Studios working with the theaters. Theater employees become delivery drivers, show up at your home with a movie basket, popcorn, drinks, snacks, and a VOD code to watch a film, like a $50 package. Again, I don't know. They have tried several times to get something like that going, and it's never been embraced. As much as a lot of people in the fan community think that would work great, they've done little tests about things with stuff like this in the past, and it just never has. Rob, do you remember that one they tried doing a few years ago where you would get this specific set-top player that you could stream first-run movies to it, and only on this player would it work because it was heavily encrypted and heavily digital right management's in. It would be like, I think it was the $50 mark, $50 for removing stuff like that. And they did some limited tests of it. And their basic findings was people weren't actually, as much as people say they were, it just wasn't, people just weren't interested. And it didn't work and it went away. So I don't know. I mean, look, at some point, there's going to come a revolution in the fundamental way movies are done. But I hope that the foundational aspect of the communal movie watching experience is never taken away. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for other innovations, but you got to get innovation that people are actually wanting to do. Like we've been hearing numbers, people inside the industry have been hearing numbers that like Bloodshot, Invisible Man, even Sonic have not been doing great. They have not been getting the type of at-home numbers that people were hoping they would. But I don't know.
But it's a paradigm that hasn't shifted yet. I mean, people don't even really know that was an option. It was something. It's certainly, people think that, the internet is this great thing and you can get people to you'll make tons of money. You still have to market it. There's so much out there. People have to know it's even a viable alternative, and they're not looking out for it. And when something goes to the home, it has to be marketed like anything else, so people know it's even there. If they don't know it, they're not going to flock to it, and they've got to for the first time ever, a theatrically released movie is available in the home concurrently, and they've got to make it a big deal. They've got to market it like everything else.
I remember I was reading recently, one of the guys, I think it was from Variety, the guy over Variety was saying, one of the big obstacles, though, is right now we have been conditioned with the new streaming services and all that kind of stuff that we get stuff at home for free. I mean, that's kind of, we pay for Disney Plus and we pay for Netflix, but that the home consumer, they were saying, is basically been conditioned lately that, I paid my $7. I get all my content for free. And the notion of dropping $40 for a movie that you don't get to have a night out and a social thing out and talking about how our social behavior is still about going to the movies is partially a social event. It's a thing. We have a date to go out to the movies and things like that. And people are just not conditioned with the notion of spending $35 to get a movie at home, particularly if it's a rental. It's just not something done. And it's not an economic model that works. But the paradigm shift, you're right, Rob, is yet to come. And they'll figure something will happen at some point where we'll get some kind of, paradigm shift. But right now, it's still a difficult thing. All right, Frankie W. Gouge writes, must-see Western doubleheader. Young Guns 1 and 2, preferably while doing peyote. Do you see the size of that chicken? By the way, whatever happened to Emilio Estevez? Always liked his films, even the bad ones. Men at Work with brother Charlie Sheen. I happen to like Men at Work, by the way, where they're both garbage men. I happen to like Men at Work. Emilio Estevez, listen, just like a lot of performers, they have their day and then they kind of fade out, and he got into directing. Emilio Estevez got into directing, and he's done a few other little things, but not a lot. I will admit, Rob, I am not the world's biggest, I'm not a Young Guns guy. Don't get me wrong, I don't dislike Young Guns, but I'm not nearly as much of a Young Guns guy as like Mark Ellis, who we had here on the show the other day. I am not a big Young Guns guy.
Mark Ellis is a child.
What are you a Young Guns guy? What do you think of Young Guns 1 and 2?
To me, I mean, I appreciate. There was a time when bringing in all these young Brat Packer or Brat Packer adjacent actors and put them in various genre movies was working. And I see like Young Guns and Lost Boys and all this like hip young actors hipping up the joint. I think that's cool. But, Young Guns might as well have been a cop movie instead of a movie about the Old West. It could have been anything. And it's fine. I think there's a place for it. And look, they were Young Guns and Young Guns 2. I think they're enjoyable movies for what they are, but they're not movies that I sit down and go, oh yeah, I want to go revisit this again.
Here's a question fun. Though. I don't remember the answer to this.
Tombstone.
Oh, me too. Answer this though, because I'll give it this, but I don't know if it's true or not. The best thing to come out of Young Guns, either of them, was John Bon Jovi's Dead or Alive. Now, here's my question. By the way, one of the great songs ever, Dead or Alive. It's like usually one of the first things I go to when I pick up my guitar. I play a little Dead or Alive.
Well, I tend to think of Young Guns as there's movies I think of as MTV movies. And I think that's a perfect example where a song is as much a part of the film's appeal as anything else, because a movie like Young Guns had this appeal beyond, and to a certain extent, I would even say Top Gun is a movie like that, in that it was a pop culture crossover thing that you heard the song, you saw the movie, you have the attitude. It's almost it's an interesting. I don't know. Somebody needs to write the definitive book on those 80s movies that had that crossover MTV appeal generation. And I think Young Guns is one of them.
All right, let's keep moving on here. We got a bunch to get through here. An anonymous viewer writes in, new Netflix series, Vampires. I think it's French. It is so effing weird and out there. I don't know if it's good or bad, like a car accident. Couldn't turn it off. Ever had that experience unsettled in your mind, whether something is good or bad? Well, Rob, you got a show you're watching right now called, what was it again?
Manifest.
But are you familiar with this vampire show on Netflix? I have personally not heard of it, so I don't know what it's talking about.
Wait, which one? I'm sorry.
It's called Vampires. It's French. It's on Netflix right now.
Oh.
I'm not familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it either. I mean, no, I have not watched this. I want to see this. I'm in. Count me in. I'll watch it.
Imagine that, a Netflix series that Netflix didn't let us know well enough that it was even on.
There's some crazy. There's this series about an '80s Japanese director who started directing porn that's based on a true story that's on Netflix. Somebody sent me a link to it. It looks fantastic. I'm like, I never heard of this.
I've never heard of it either, because Netflix does as great as Netflix is, they are terrible at promoting their own material. All right, Willow writes, the story about the kid asking what's porn, that was funny yesterday, reminded me of when I first saw a commercial for erectile dysfunction on TV and tried asking my parents what that was. Have you asked your parents any awkward questions like that? Well, I don't know, because if I was a child and I was asking my parents an awkward question, I wouldn't have seen it as an awkward question at the time. So it doesn't stand out to me like that. I don't know. Because somebody wrote in a story yesterday about how they're in a theater and like the term porn came up or something like that. Then you could hear a kid ask their mommy, what's porn? It's like, oh my God, what do you do in that situation? I said I would rather run into oncoming traffic than have to try to answer that at that point. So yeah, I think because as a child, I wouldn't have even been self-aware that what I was asking was an awkward question. So I wouldn't know. I don't remember. But that was a great story yesterday, Willow. That was a great story yesterday. All right, Suthius writes, hey, gents. Stay-at-home order just issued for, what's VA in the States? Is that Virginia?
Yeah.
VA is Virginia? Okay. For VA until June 10th. Yikes. What are y'all's thoughts on the upcoming streaming service Quibi? Episodes and content are to be under 10 minutes. I've seen a few trailers and I'm curious, but it would be my 10th service. I know. You know, we've brought up Quibi a couple times, Rob. I am of two minds on it. On the one hand, it's a fascinating idea. They have spent ungodly amounts of money on this. They've gone out and gotten the biggest stars. They've been promoting it like hell. It's an interesting concept, 10 minutes or less pieces of content. It's a fascinating idea. and a fascinating experiment, and I think it's going to crash and burn pretty hard. I don't know why. I just feel like this is not going to take off. But they clearly have a lot of belief in it, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting a lot of resources into it. I just don't hear anybody being excited about it. Like they were with, a Disney Plus, or people are excited about HBO Max, or people are excited about, I'm hearing nobody being excited about Quibi. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess we'll find out once it actually is out and we're going to be able to actually engage with it to get a sense about whether it'll appeal. But Rob, what do you think first of all, what do you think about it? And then do you think it's got a chance of being successful?
Well, dude, I'm fascinated to see what happens with Quibi. They've pioneered this technology where you can watch things on your phone either horizontally or vertically. But I think their entire premise that people want to watch great programming in these bite-sized chunks is something that was disproven on YouTube and social media a long time ago. Remember when people said 10 years ago on YouTube, oh, it all has to be like 3 minutes or less. No one's going to watch long form material on YouTube. And they've bought into that. They've a Quibi that they want everybody to believe in. A Quibi is 10 minutes or less. Well, that's fine, but I don't think that people really want to consume A-list, highbrow, very well-produced entertainment like a remake of The Fugitive they're doing in 7-minute chunks on your phone when you're waiting for a bus. If there's something that you really want to get into and there's programming that you really like, you want to watch it at home on your nice screen and pay attention. I don't want to watch great narrative programming when I'm waiting for a bus, constantly looking up, when's the train coming? When's the bus coming? And I think that their premise is based on a faulty idea that was true 10 years ago, but is no longer true today. I mean, people are watching Joe Rogan podcasts that last 2.5 hours. And I think that, we'll see. I could be proven wrong, but they're even selling the channel on the fact that a Quibi is 10 minutes or less. You have Sophie Turner in a dress shop looking smoking hot talking about Quibi, and I'm like, is she on one of their shows, or is this just a commercial? And I think I want them to succeed, but it seems to me you've got all of these older people that are involved with this. And sure, they've got some YouTube influencers involved in certain shows, but it just seems to me like they're jumping into the service with an idea that is way past its expiration date. But who knows?
All right, let's keep rolling here. Next one up is Michael Jones. I think it's Michael Jones. Yes. Michael Jones writes, John, I just finished The Runaway. The Runaway. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't fan club. You probably meant Runaways with an S on the end there. John, I just finished The Runaway Season 3 and really enjoyed it. I wasn't a fan of Cloak and Dagger. Neither was I, unfortunately. But I really liked the episode they were in it. Have you seen Season 3? And if you have, what did you think? No, I haven't seen Season 3. So thanks for the update that Cloak and Dagger appear in it. I'm just teasing you. It's been out for long enough. I should have watched it by now. Ann and I love The Runaways. We love them. Ann's got every single Runaway comic ever produced. And she's the one who really got me into the show, and I love the show. But for whatever reason that I cannot explain, we just have never gotten around. You know what it is? Here's why. Because Runaways is one of the few shows that Ann and I watch together. And so it's just become crazy trying to coordinate watching that, and we just never got around to watching Season 3. And we both want to. I love it. And I can't give you a real strong, valid reason why we haven't watched it yet, given the fact that we really like Season 1 and 2. But we will get around to it. We will and get that. Rob, you got a lot of shows or any shows that you're like, yeah, man, I watched the season of them. I loved it. And I never watched it again. And I don't know why. Like, do you have any shows that are like that?
Yeah, you know what? One big one, and why am I drawing a blank on it? And I love it. And it stars Cillian Murphy, Peaky Blinders.
Oh, okay.
I watched the first 2 seasons of Peaky Blinders and loved it. But I just haven't gotten back to it. And everything about Peaky Blinders I thought was great. And what are they up to, like Season 5 now or something? And I haven't
saw
gone
an ad
back
for it for the newest season. I'm like, really? Still? I've had the opposite reaction that you did. I watched the first 4 or 5 episodes and I just couldn't get into it.
Oh,
despite the fact that
Yeah.
everybody that I know seems to really like it. And I tried to get into it, just didn't quite work for me. But yeah, then I saw an ad that it was still on. I couldn't believe it. But yes, I will get around to watching season 3 of the Runaways. Avery writes, are there any actors that you can't help but to focus on their looks? For me, there's a few, but the main ones are Zac Efron and Scarlett Johansson. I mean, look, there are some people, men and women, Rob, that are just so effing unfairly gorgeous, just effing unfairly attractive people. See, and the reason I get angry at this is because I believe, like Thanos, that the universe is in perfect balance. And when some idiot like a Zac Efron or a Javier Bardem or a Scarlett Johansson or a Blake Lively or whatever get that much of the good looks, it means that for schlubs like me, there was less to go around. And it kind of pisses me off when I see, like, it's just staggering. Like, there's just sometimes you see some people who are just so stupidly good looking. It's like, how does that happen? And yes, it does. By the way, can I pull a little TMZ here for a second?
Uh-oh.
Can I pull a little TMZ?
Yes.
Because is also something universally unfair when a Ryan Reynolds gets to not only have a relationship with Alanis Morissette and then be in a relationship with Scarlett Johansson, but then ends up married to Blake Lively. That is also fundamentally unfair. And don't get me wrong, I like Ryan Reynolds, good Canadian kid, but fuck you. And then, now, what I'm reading, I had no idea about this. Did you know about this, Rob? Ben Affleck.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Ben Affleck, who first of all was married to probably my all-time Hollywood crush. To this day, it was Jennifer Garner. Jennifer Garner to this day is my all-time Hollywood crush. I mean, I've had other Hollywood crushes, yes. Jennifer Garner is probably at the top of the list of my all-time Hollywood crush. But apparently now he's dating Anna
de Armas
from Blade Runner 2049 and from Knives Out.
Yeah.
How's that fair? Rob? I want answers. How is this fair? Now, granted, I lucked out. I married the greatest woman in the world. That's great. One for me. I know, but no, seriously. I mean, how is that fair? These guys, it's just unfair. And I like Ben Affleck as well, but F him too. F Ryan Reynolds and F Ben Affleck. That's if I had titles to the episodes of the John Campea Show, that would be the title of today's episode. F Ryan Reynolds and F Ben Affleck. That would be the title of my show today. Anyway. All right, I should stop obsessing and being bitter. Let's move on here. Avery Zavala writes, who is your favorite redeemed character? Mine is Yondu in Guardians 2. Plus, I think Michael Rooker is an underrated casting in the MCU. Oh, I ended up loving Yondu. I liked Yondu right from the first Guardians. He's great. But no, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually just brought this up the other day. My all-time favorite character, literary character in history, and I ended up loving the character also on the big screen, was Boromir in Lord of the Rings, played by Sean Bean. That character, that is my, and because specifically of redemption, that's what it is to me. So that's mine. Rob, what about you? Do you got a favorite redeemed character?
The first thing that jumped into my mind, and a lot of people are gonna be like, what? Is Jakar in Babylon 5.
Wow, that's a deep cut.
I know Jakar, one of the main characters in that show, but his arc over the course of the 5 seasons of Babylon 5, his redemption arc was incredible. And if you haven't seen Babylon 5, I know it's a tough slog now because the visual effects were done on, an Amiga back in the mid-90s. But it's one of my favorite science fiction shows that's ever been on TV, and especially of seasons 2 through 4. Unbelievable science fiction episodic television. But Jakar, what a character.
All right, let's move on here. Next one up comes to us from Jay Bling, who writes, you once said Christian said a one-word explanation for Palpatine's return to Rise of Skywalker with the movie was because. Yeah, it was going back to that. Christian and I we did a video prior to The Rise of Skywalker coming out. And we were talking about how, the movie's obviously going to explain how he's back. Little did we know. But we said, of course, the movie's going to explain how he's back. And then Christian said, yeah, they're not going to go, so Palpatine, how are you back? Because they're not going to do that. And yet that's what they did. Having just watched it again, there's literally another word in the movie, courtesy of Poe Dameron, somehow. Palpatine returned. That's true. That's true. That instead of because, it was somehow. That's the line. That's the extent of the explanation in the damn movie. Somehow. Okay, we'll just go with that. That's a good observation, Jay Bling. All right, Jay Bling also writes, I gotta say, I'm not as excited about the idea of Rock and Statham squaring off against Keanu Reeves, mainly because Reeves isn't as similar to Rock and Statham as Vin Diesel is. However, if Reeves bulked up and shaved his head, I think I'd change my mind. See, I gotta disagree with that. See, I do see Keanu Reeves, because we brought it up the other day, Keanu Reeves and Jason Statham would be a great on-screen pair as antagonist and protagonist. Because, yeah, Vin Diesel's more along the style of The Rock, sure. But I think you got two actually martial arts trained actors, they wouldn't even need other people doing their own stunts, of a John Wick style Keanu Reeves as a villain and Jason Statham. I think that is a dream pairing. Then you throw in the Rock into there. And by the way, The Rock fighting Jason Statham in that first movie, when they basically destroy that place that they're in, that was awesome. Two completely different styles, speed and just tactical amazingness versus huge power. It made for an amazing fight scene. And I think you get a guy like Keanu Reeves as a villain fighting both those guys with the varying styles. I think that turns out to be gold. All right, 50 Shades of Green writes, April Fool's, John. I don't know what the April Fool's is, but yes, unfortunately, not a lot of people doing that today. An anonymous viewer writes, have you seen the football movie Greater on Netflix? I've not even heard of it because Netflix sucks at letting people know that their stuff is on. It's low budget but decent. It climaxes with a great scene by Neil McDonough, Captain America, and Nick Searcy from Justified. It's based on a true story of Brandon Burlsworth. I am not familiar with that at all. Of course, McDonough, we just saw him in, he was just in Sonic the Hedgehog for an ever so brief moment, but he had a pretty good scene with Jim Carrey in that. I have not heard of this. Rob, have you heard of Greater?
No, but again, not surprising.
Yeah, not surprising. But, anonymous viewer, thank you for putting on everybody's radar. All right, final question we're going to get to here with Robert here today is 69 Shades of Geek writes, since the Ahsoka new... You probably meant news. Since the Ahsoka news got released, everyone's been asking if Sabine, Ezra, Rex, or Thrawn would show up in Mandalorian Season 2, but no one is asking about the Bendu. It makes sense since the show goes to a different planet every single episode. I don't see the Bendu fitting into that at all. I don't think a show like Mandalorian, I don't think the Bendu has a place in it, not to mention when you just... That's an expensive thing to do, would be the Bendu. So I don't think they would do the Bendu whatsoever. I think that's why, by the way, just because one character shows up, that doesn't mean this episode of The Mandalorian is actually Clone Wars or Rebels Season 6 or Season 5. It just because one character is there doesn't mean they're going to bring the whole gang along with them. So I just don't see the Bendu, again, being... something that fits in with Mandalorian. I don't see that at all. All right, 420 Shades of Geek writes, also, they can still use Tom Baker's voice since he doesn't have to physically be on set to do it. Now is the time to do it while Tom is still with us. Again, that's not a reason to do something in a movie or TV show. I mean, there's some emotional mentality to that, sure, but I don't see that being a legitimate reason to do something in it. Again, it's just not something that fits, I believe, in with the Mandalorian storyline. Then writes, what's the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, I should, sorry. The people of Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but people of Abu Dhabi do.
Oh, that's terrible.
I'm not going to say that I didn't like it at least a little bit, though.
Come on, that was, you know what? I laughed.
Okay, sorry. I said we would get to Rob's last question. Let's make this
Abu
one
Dhabi
Rob's
doo!
last. It's actually not so bad. All right, Tim Bula the Spider Monkey writes, a few movie recommendations for everybody. Last Man on Earth, 1964. The Quiet Earth, 1985. And On the Beach, I'm not familiar with that one, 1959. Maybe a bit bleak for these trying times, but they are all great. Rob, I'm not familiar with The Beach. Anyway, two questions for you, Rob.
Yeah, it's a post-nuclear apocalypse film where the crew of this submarine is they're in Australia waiting for radiation to arrive to kill them all.
Ooh, that does sound bleak. I've not heard of that. Well, then out of those three that are mentioned, Last Man on Earth, Quiet Earth, The Beach, what's your favorite out of those three?
Well, I have to tell you, I own two different copies of The Quiet Earth on Blu-ray. It's Jeff Murphy, who is a New Zealand director who passed away. He was a second unit director on Lord of the Rings. He made two really great movies. One was called Utu. I mean, he's made other things, but Utu. The Quiet Earth is a lovely and sad end of the world movie where a man named Zach Hobson, a scientist, wakes up one day in Auckland, New Zealand, and every person is gone. And it's haunting and creepy. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but he starts going insane, and then he realizes maybe he's not as alone as he thought. And it's a really great example of how to do low budget science fiction correctly. And I love everything about The Quiet Earth.
All right, Rob. Well, that will do it for you today. I know you have things you got to run off and do. Thanks for being here again today. Dude, in the meantime, where can people find you and all your stuff online?
You can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram, my name, Robert Meyer Burnett, or find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, the show about something.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and we will see you a little bit later this week. Have a good one, man.
All right.
All right, guys. So with that down, let's keep on moving here. We still got about 20 minutes here, so let's keep flying through these questions that you guys have sent in. Next one up comes to us from Glenn Tracy, who writes, can you think of movie franchises that's best changed the genre they were about from movie to movie? T2 changes Terminator from a horror to action. That's a good observation. Aliens flips the script. Both two of the best sequels in cinematic history prove sequels aren't always worse. Oh, no, and we've talked a little bit, Glenn Tracy, about how we've been going over some lists of sequels that were better than the originals. Like a lot of people think Empire Strikes Back was even better than the first Star Wars movie. Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan was better than Star Trek, the motion picture. I thought Rush Hour 2 was infinitely better than Rush Hour 1. Yeah, there are a lot of examples where sequels can actually be better than the original. Unfortunately, there's also a hell of a lot of examples of sequels that are not as good as the originals or just flat out bad. Your two examples, though, are great examples where, like, basically the franchise changed genres. Both kind of distinctly horror to start, although they are definitely elements of sci-fi and action as well. But then the sequels, far more action than they are horror. Certainly elements of horror in there as well. So they do kind of change the scripts, and that's the similarity. You know, Rob and I talked about that on the show once before, and it's a good observation. But yeah, you're right. Sequels can absolutely be as good or better than the originals. It just doesn't happen every time. All right, Houston Sims writes, hey, John, Quibi, the new streaming platform, launches in a week from now, and it looks pretty fun, but the comments on the ads are very negative. Don't get the hate, especially with 90 days free offered. Just wondering your thoughts and bring on the filthy. Well, again, Robert and I just talked about that a few minutes ago. Again, I think it's a fascinating concept. But the idea... It seems like the idea of bite-sized content is something for the Twitter generation, right? Just bite-sized content. But it seems to me that with narrative content, like in the era of TikTok and before TikTok, there was Vine and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, short little things that we catch on the go are great, particularly when they're comedy or whatever. But when it comes to narrative content, it actually seems to me that people want longer form stuff. It just strikes me that way. You know, The Mandalorian comes out and people were pissed that each episode was not at least an hour long. You know, Rob made the point that, you know, people are watching, 2.5 hours of the Joe Rogan show. You guys are watching a 2-hour John Campea show. I just don't know that this model that people, as when narrative content is concerned, that people want shorter form stuff. I'm not sure that's true. But listen, I got to tip the hat to them that this is a different idea. 10-minute bite-sized content. It's a really interesting idea that we haven't really seen somebody do before, especially trying it on a network level. Trying it on a full network scale is not something we've really seen before. And so I tip the hat to them for wanting to try it. I don't know if what people are looking for. And maybe the content will be great. Maybe the content will be wonderful. But again, it's not... I don't know. I think we won't know for sure until we do get a chance to engage with it and really see how we all feel about it. But I'm a little bit pessimistic about it right now, to be honest. I'm a little bit pessimistic about it. All right, we move on here. Colin writes, "Hey, John, what do you think of Dwight Yoakam's performance in Sling Blade? I thought he should have got nominated for supporting actor, and Sling Blade is a top 5 movie of all time. Billy Bob, John Ritter, Lucas Black were great too." Sling Blade is great, but here's the thing. Hold a second. Let me bring up the IMDb page here for a second. Sling Blade, which was kind of it was the height of Billy Bob Thornton. Again, that character, he made that character. That thing was great. Dwight Yoakam was very good in it. I'll be honest with you. Damn, I forgot John Ritter was in it. How can I forget that? I forgot, but Lucas Black. All right. But the thing is, the movie is so centered on Billy Bob Thornton that it's, you know what a good example of that is? Let me bring this up here. Hold a second. There Will Be Blood. Here's the thing. Sling Blade, Billy Bob Thornton was so great in it, and I believe he did get an Academy Award nomination for that. I believe he did. I could be wrong about that. I'm going to have to go back and check that out. But it reminds me a lot of There Will Be Blood. Because in There Will Be Blood, I'm trying to remember the name. I had to go to the IMDb page because I'm forgetting the name of why did I forget Paul Dano? Paul Dano is so good in There Will Be Blood. Like, so freaking ridiculously good in There Will Be Blood. But nobody thinks of Paul Dano at all in There Will Be Blood because Daniel Day-Lewis maybe gave the greatest performance in history of a male lead in a movie in There Will Be Blood. I think you can absolutely say, like, maybe you don't think it's the number one, but I don't think there's any getting around that it has to be in the conversation. It has to be in the conversation. There Will Be Blood was so great, and Paul Dano was so amazing in it, but nobody talks about it because Daniel Day-Lewis gave his thing. And I think there's everything else you can talk about, that whether it's Dwight Yoakam or John Ritter or Lucas Black or whatever. Everybody's so focused when you look about Sling Blade on what Billy Bob Thornton did in that movie, and he did get an Academy Award nomination for that it's hard to think about it in any other terms or in any other way. All right, let's move on here. Next up, Jay Bling writes, someone brought up the Justice for Han moment in Bad Boys for Life. I actually thought that moment was handled much better than Shaw or Kylo, because it seemed to be well acknowledged that the character in question hadn't earned redemption yet. Well, I mean, yeah, but they really haven't done anything with the character at all yet, right? They really hadn't done anything with the character at all yet. So it's not like he didn't earn it or did not fail to earn it. So I don't know. You do raise a good point, though, Jay Bling. You do raise a good point, but I got to admit, I'm with those people that at the end of Bad Boys for Life, and we won't give spoilers away, I felt it too. I felt like, come on, right? I don't know. It's not even a matter of earning it. It's that he's not getting his true, what's the word I'm looking for? Repercussions or punishment for what it is he had done. But again, we'll see what they do with it once we get into Bad Boys 4. All right, next up, Tampa Bay Succaneers writes, top 6 best / top 6 worst Eddie Murphy films. Best: 6, Life; 5, 48 Hours; 4, Dolomite; 3, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Coming to America; number 1, Raw. Worst: 6, Haunted Mansion. Ooh, number 5, Meet Dave. Number 4, 1,000 Words. That's the one with the tree. 1,000 Words. That's the one with the tree. Oh my God, that movie's so bad. Number 3, Holy Man. Number 2, Norbit. Number 1, Pluto Mash, which made $7 million on a $100 million budget. Ouch. Ouch isn't even the right word. Ouch isn't the right word. Yeah, that's, oh my God. That's the thing about Eddie Murphy. Like, it's so weird. There are really 2 Eddie Murphy careers. There's the Eddie Murphy career where he did movies like 48 Hours and Coming to America and Life and Dreamgirls. Don't forget, he got an Academy Award nomination for Dreamgirls and all those. But this is also the same Eddie Murphy who has maybe made some of the worst movies in cinematic history. It is clear. It's not like he's just bad. He's made nothing bad. He's made great movies and made some truly, truly awful films too. All right, let's see here. Rob Saint 007 writes, "Hey John and Rob, my movie suggestion is Time After Time, 1979, Malcolm McDowell and David Warner, H.G. Wells chasing Jack the Ripper to modern day San Francisco, directed by Nicholas Meyer, who directed Wrath of Khan." Ooh, I didn't remember that. Great fun sci-fi movie. You know what? It has been forever since I saw that one. Let me bring that one up. I saw that one years and years ago. And I totally forgot that it was the same director. So yeah, Malcolm McDowell, one of his great ones, David Warner, Mary Steenburgen, Charles Covey, Kent Williams, James Garrett, Leo Lewis. I mean, yeah, I had totally forgotten about that one. H.G. Wells pursues Jack the Ripper in the 20th century when the serial murderer uses the future writer's time machine to escape the time period. It's a mix of mystery and sci-fi and a lot of glorious stuff. Good recommendation, Rob. All right. Nav Graham writes, "Yesterday you discussed the potential of Keanu Reeves joining Hobbs and Shaw 2. I love Keanu, but I also can't go past a little actor called Henry Cavill. Imagine seeing Cavill fight The Rock. They both do their own stunts and have the same management team." Yeah, that's great. Listen, normally, you know my feeling on this, guys. I don't care about casting. Normally, I just don't care about casting. It's not about the actor. You come up with the movie first. See, that's why they didn't put Keanu Reeves in the first Hobbs and Shaw. They just realized it doesn't fit. It doesn't work. So they didn't do it. You don't go, let's get the actor, now let's build a role for them. And that's why I like that they talked about it for the first one, but just realized this isn't a fit yet. So hopefully the next one is. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But listen, you know how I feel about Henry Cavill. I love Henry Cavill. I think the dude is great. I love him in Man from U.N.C.L.E. I think he's the best Superman we've ever had. I love Henry Cavill. And yeah, I wouldn't say no to him being cast in Hobbs and Shaw. I wouldn't say no to that, of course. Colin writes, "Which do you think is a better film, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 or The Dark Knight? I think both films are great, but I'll give Spider-Man 2 a slight edge because of the action scenes. The best I done scene in any comic movie, that train scene, though, the train scene is great. The train scene is great. And yes, the action in Spider-Man 2 is better than the action in The Dark Knight. It is. It just is. It's all subjective, of course, but I completely agree. The action in Spider-Man 2 is better. That said, The Dark Knight was one of the early comic book movies that wasn't just a comic book movie, you know? It was a movie that really transcended a genre. And I would argue that there are many other aspects of The Dark Knight was better than Spider-Man 2. I think Spider-Man 2 is magnificent. But overall, even though I agree that the action in Spider-Man 2 is better than the action in The Dark Knight, overall, I gotta say, I think The Dark Knight is probably the better movie overall. But, I mean, it's a no-lose situation. These are two magnificent, magnificent comic book movies. Absolutely. Kevin Rubio, our friend, writes in and writes, "John, just wanted to recommend another greatly underrated film, 1990s Truly, Madly, Deeply, with Hans Gruber himself, who was amazing in that. Alan Rickman. He might have gotten an Academy Award nomination for that. I have to go look that up. Stars Juliet Stevenson and the late, great Alan Rickman in a surprising romantic turn as the ghost of her dead lover. It's a heartwarming and often very funny." I just got to go see if he did get nominated for that. I love Truly, Madly, Deeply. Madly Deep. Let me see if it can find it here. The 1990 film. I'm just looking this up to see if it got. He did not get an Academy Award nomination for it. He did not. He got nominated for a BAFTA award. He got nominated for Best Actor at the BAFTAs. That's what he got. I remember a lot of people thought he should have gotten an Academy Award nomination too for that. I can't remember off the top of my head who the other performers were that did get nominated that year, but I know there were a lot of people who thought he maybe should have gotten Academy. It might have been his best overall performance. Of course, we'll think of him. We'll think of Hans Gruber. We'll think of Sheriff of Nottingham. We'll think of Professor Snape. We'll think of a lot of icons. Think of him from Galaxy Quest. We'll think of him a lot of things, but maybe his best performance was truly Madly Deeply. I love the recommendation, Kevin. All right. Initial D's writes, fun fact, Wendy's brother Ben from Ozarks is Ward Meacham from Iron Fist. Looks way different with facial hair. Again, I don't watch Ozark, so I don't know. I'm not even quite sure who plays Wendy, so I'm not familiar with it because I don't watch the show. But I heard it's great. A lot of people are loving it, and a lot of people are very excited about season 3 is out there right now. So, hey, while we're all locked in, gives you guys who are a fan of the show even more stuff to watch right now, which is something we're all desperately looking forward to. All right, Jonathan Teft writes, no joke, if the Oscars were tomorrow, the 5 movies I nominate for Best Picture would be The Way Back, Emma, The Gentleman, The Invisible Man, and Onward. And I gotta say, I 100% agree. 5 for 5. I agree. And of course, if they had up to 9 nominees, then you're going to start, there's slim pickings after that. But honestly, right now, I think if I had to dole out my nominees, I think, Jonathan, you and I are completely on the same page. I think we're completely on the same page on that. Nice picks. All right, Jonathan also writes, if you haven't seen Emma yet, I highly recommend it. It's a great romantic comedy period piece. Anya Taylor-Joy, who is great, is wonderful in it, and Bill Nye is a scene stealer. He always is, whether he's in Shaun of the Dead, whether he's in a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or whether he's here, he always does. And whenever you mention Anya Taylor-Joy, though, all I can think about is give me this damn New Mutants movie. For heaven's sakes, give me this new movie. Anyway, Initial D's writes, hey, John and Rob. Rob, your weekly world news reference yesterday was awesome. I used to hoard magazines, and that was one of them. My favorite was The Boneless Baby, but I had a Bat Boy or two. If I didn't toss them, I'm glad I send a tweet of one. I have spoken. So on yesterday's show, Rob made the comparison because we were talking about the Jason Momoa. There was a story going around yesterday. We brought up all the websites that were running stories that Warner Brothers is looking to replace Jason Momoa as Aquaman. And of course, when we followed the sources that everybody was quoting, it was all coming from the same website, WeGotThisCovered.com, which is, of course, a site you should never, ever, ever believe when it comes to their scoops. You should never believe them. And Rob made the comparison of them being the Weekly World News, which is an old thing, but Initial D's remembers. Thanks for bringing that up, man. Thanos writes, hey, John and Rob, what is your favorite season of The Wire? Currently in the middle of season 2. I have heard the 4th season is one of the best seasons in television history. I loved the 4th. Now, if that's the one that comes after the Docs season, which some people crap on the Docs season. I actually like the Docs season, but season 4 was great. The initial season I thought was incredible. Listen, there are still a lot of people today who've never seen The Wire. There are a lot of TV pundits who consider The Wire to kind of be the godfather of television. Like, there are a lot of TV pundits who kind of feel like The Wire is like, end of sentence, the best television show in history. And there's a lot of people who have not watched it. Now, I was very late to the game on that. I only watched it for the first time a couple of years ago. And it is magnificent. It's not in my personal top 5 best TV shows of all time, but it is a magnificent show. So if you guys have not checked it out yet, it's on HBO. Take Thanos' suggestion, get started and start binging The Wire. It's incredible. And once you watch it for the first time, you're going to see just how influential it has been on all the other big television that's come after it. You're going to see how all the other big televisions that have come since have borrowed heavily from the influences of The Wire. It's really kind of staggering. All right, just time for a couple more questions here, guys. Major Tom writes, Keanu Reeves has played a villain before. There's a little movie that he also directed called Man of Tai Chi, starring Keanu Reeves, and of course, as the main villain, and Tiger Chen, who helped train Reeves for the Matrix films. Not a bad little movie. I completely forgot about the Man of Tai Chi. So where this is all coming up from again is, of course, we were talking about the idea of Keanu Reeves being in Hobbs and Shaw 2 as a villain and the possibilities of that and why would it be intriguing. And one of the things I said yesterday was, I don't think he's ever played a villain. Major Tom is this is the great thing about having a film fan community instead of just one idiot spouting off things. Thanks for that, Major Tom. Nerd Talk writes, hey, John, I have a couple of movie recommendations for everyone. A couple of favorites of mine. The American President, I love that one with Michael Keaton, Michael Douglas. I love The American President. And my guilty pleasure, Batteries Not Included. That's an old one with the little robots flying around. Batteries Not Included. I'm going to be revisiting these classics tonight. Just let me make sure I'm getting the right one, though, because you said, The American President. I think that's the Michael Keaton one, or the Michael Douglas one. And it is 1995, Michael Douglas, Annette Bening. I really like that movie. The cool thing about that is in that movie, I believe Michael Douglas, who plays the President of the United States, his chief of staff was played by Martin Sheen, who is, of course, America's favorite screen president from West Wing. So it's not shared cinematic universe, which is kind of funny. We know Martin Sheen from being the president in that, and then we see him in The American President being chief of staff to the president. It's kind of fun. Those are good picks, Nerd Talk. Those are good picks. All right. Dave XP writes, movie pet peeve. People screaming their lungs out whenever firing a big weapon. It doesn't make the shot more accurate or more powerful. That's true, but it is a common thing. When you're holding up a big weapon, firing out, going, "Roar," as if that's somehow making the weapon work better. Yeah. Hey, listen, though, I guess in combat, even in combat sports, when a big punch is thrown, a big kick, rah, I don't know, maybe there's something to it, but I agree. That one never did make sense to me. Dave XP. That's a good observation. All right. James Durden writes, 5 more recommended movies. Number 1, The Emerald Forest. Number 2, The Blue Lagoon. That's an old cut. Number 3, On Golden Pond. I love On Golden Pond. I unapologetically love that movie. That is great. That was like a Best Picture nominee, like when I was just a little kid, but I've watched it as an adult a couple times. I love that movie. Number 4, Short Circuit. Number 5, Splash. My wife is actually getting ready to watch Splash for the first time ever. You said The Last Starfighter in my last list needs a remake. I heard Steven Spielberg and others have wanted to do it, but couldn't get the rights to it. There have been several people taking runs at getting a Last Starfighter done, including like the original screenwriter for the original movie have been trying to get one done. Haven't been able to get it to go, though. I hope someday, really soon, that they can. All right, guys. Last question of the day comes to us from Tristan Thorpe, who writes, this past weekend, I got around to watching 1992's Candyman, and now I see where 2020's Candyman is going. So excited. Also, watch Shawshank Redemption, and wow, what a movie. So much to talk about, from the narrative to the characters. Just a masterpiece. Dudes, you guys have probably gotten sick of hearing me saying Shawshank Redemption there's an argument that it's the greatest movie of all time. I've got it in my top 3 or 4 for sure. It is simply a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie. I could talk about Shawshank Redemption all day, and the fact that there's so many people today who've still not seen it breaks my little Italian heart. Guys, while you're bunkered down, watch Shawshank Redemption and be happy and be glad that you did. It's such a powerful movie. You got to check it out. I'm glad, Tristan, that you had a chance to go check that out. And I'm looking forward to Candyman 2, as a matter of fact. I'm looking forward to that as well. All right, guys, listen. For everybody else, from the Irish Mug Guy, K Major, Garrett Couch, Anthony Lucolano, and all the way up, do not worry. I'm going to do a companion video this afternoon. You guys sent in those questions. I'm going to answer them properly in a video. And so watch for a little bit later today. A companion video will go up getting to all your questions that have been sent in. But for now, guys, that will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here, making the show part of your day. Guys, especially as we're all hunkered down out of our regular routines, it really means a lot that you would choose to spend some of your time with us here talking about our favorite things in the world, movies and TV. And I hope you guys have enjoyed yourselves. I know I've had a good time here today. Special thank you to all you guys who did send in questions, because not only did you give us great fun things to talk about, you also supported the channel while you were doing it. And all of us here at the John Campea Show, thank you very much for that. Guys, don't forget, we'll be back again tomorrow. That will do it for me for now, guys. Stay home, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other, guys. That'll do it for me. My name is John Campea, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.